Humans have been thinking about space since time immemorial. There is no end to human curiosity about the environment, who lives there, or whether there are any living beings. From ancient times the success of man in space has been enviable. Rockets are the main means of space travel in the present age. Rocket is an English word. A rocket is a special type of propulsion technique. The rocket was invented in 1926. It was discovered by Dr. Having Goddard of the United States. The name of the first satellite in space is Sputnik 1. Russia's Yuri Gagarin became the world's first astronaut. On March 18, 1975, the first man was able to walk in space. It is a type of vehicle where the combustion of chemical energy causes the producers to be expelled at high speeds and the resulting force causes the rocket to move in the opposite direction at high speed. In this case, Newton's third law of motion can be identified as the principle of the rocket engine. The rocket works by reacting with the emitting substance. So it can also work in space. In fact, the efficiency of the rocket in space is higher than that of the atmosphere. Multi-stage rockets can reach any height by achieving the Earth's liberation velocity. The use of rockets for military and recreational purposes dates back to 13th century China. However, rockets have been used in important scientific, interplanetary, industrial work since the 20th century. German scientist Werner von Braun was the first to discover a liquid fuel rocket. He worked for Germany during World War II, but later moved to the United States. There he worked on the American space project. He helped send astronauts to the moon. He is called the father of rocket science. Many more modern rockets have been invented and used for human welfare, for example, Falcon 9. The use of chemical oxidizers as fuel for rockets is more common. Rocket combustion produces high-speed emissions. Different types of rockets have been invented in the present world. Interestingly, small bottles can range in size from large to spacious spacecraft. For example, Ariane 5, which is one of the largest rocket. It is used to send artificial satellites into orbit. The rocket that we are so curious about was invented by the Chinese. At that time they used to fill explosives in bamboo tubes. And that bamboo tube was called Tiao Shu, which means tomato rat. Because, in the beginning, one would run R. A strange thing happened in 13th century China. Li Cheng was the emperor of China at that time. He has organized a royal festival. During the festivities, his wife suddenly screamed. The reason was that a mad rat flew and pushed under his chair. That is why Li Cheng ended the ceremony there. And, these meat rats who arrested the people in charge, were imprisoned. Rockets have long been used as cable-only weapons since the invention of the rocket in 1928. Then in the 19th century it was thought to use the rocket for space travel. The first rockets to cross the Earth's border during the Cold War were Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, Robert Goddard, Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun. Newton introduced rocket science by discovering the law of gravitation G equals Gm, R2. We know that the gravitational force or gravity of the Earth is called gravity. With this force, the world pulls everything towards itself. The Moon is the only natural satellite of the Earth. the fifth largest satellite in the solar system. The average distance from the center of the Earth to the center of the Moon is 364,399 kilometers. It is about 30 times the diameter of the Earth. No evidence of life has been found on Mars. It is not possible to say for sure that it still has the presence of life. Scientists believe that there is water in the form of ice under the soil of Mars. Rocket infrastructure refers to the frame or structure that holds different parts. Its main parts are cylindrical rocket-shaped body, pointed nose and fin or wings. The body of the rocket is mainly made of aluminum and titanium. It has a thermal insulation system on top. The reason is to protect the rocket from the intense heat generated by friction with the air during launch. There are special sleeping bags for the astronauts that can be attached to the wall at each designated place so that no astronaut has to go around while sleeping and no accident has to happen. There are two types of satellites, one natural and the other artificial, man-made. This satellite passes over the Earth every 24 hours. Through this satellite we get news of different places in different parts of the world. According to the type of work, there are three types of satellites called LEO, MEO, GEO. Satellites can easily send pictures and videos to different parts of the world. For launching satellites into orbit, there are two types of launchers called wasteful rockets and space shuttles. The first is destroyed after the installation of the satellite and the second can be used later after the installation of the satellite. This rocket is surrounded by a booster, which helps it to rise above the Earth. These rockets become completely separate in space. These never come back to Earth. Second, spacecraft are usually like airplanes, in which there is a complete arrangement for space passengers to stay, sleep, eat and drink. This spacecraft is connected by two booster rockets and a main engine rocket. This time the work of the main rocket started. This rocket has full responsibility to take the spacecraft into space. When the spacecraft reaches space, it's separate from the main rocket, and that's where the spacecraft's journey begins. After space research is completed, the spacecraft continues to orbit the Earth and can slowly enter the Earth's atmosphere. After entering the Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft faces upwards, not downwards. The spacecraft has to face strong bell pressure as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. This spacecraft would have had a huge problem if it had not had special heat-resistant protection. Slowly the spacecraft becomes parallel as it moves closer to Earth and then lands on the airport runway like a Hawaiian ship. The wheel of the spacecraft came out after the plane landed on the runway. After landing, the parachute opens from the rear and can land very easily. In this way the astronauts reach the Earth safely. This spacecraft is reusable, which means it can be used again. You may have realized that spacecraft, not rockets, come back to Earth from space, and astronauts go into space through spacecraft. A few months ago, Elon Musk, owner of a private company, SpaceX, said in a news article that their scientists had developed a reusable rocket. This means that from now on the rocket will be able to return to Earth after placing the satellite in space orbit, but this work will still take some time to complete.